Welcome to the Panic Room, where we talk about all things panic-inducing. I am the Queen of Panic. Warning, some episodes may contain content that may be disturbing to others. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let the games begin.
Ben woke up that morning feeling exhausted, though he did not know why. Despite the fright he'd suffered in the night before, he did not once think about the Book of Agony, nor Daniel, for that matter. Not that he felt happy, necessarily, or that he suddenly became more sociable. No. In those regards, he was still in definite state of discipline. His parents never noticed, of course, though the Sunday following the birthday party, while at church with his parents and grandparents, who on occasion would go to church with them, his grandparents, Penny's parents, that is, noticed that something was amiss.
Hey, Ben? You okay?
Helen asked him as they were standing up to leave. The church's soft cacophony of noise as people gathered their things. Ben quietly nodded his head, eyes cast at his old penny loafers. In each he had placed one of the coins in a little slit for good luck.
Well, how about some ice cream before we head back to your place?
Charlie asked as he put on his jacket.
Hey, Penny, we're going to stop for ice cream with Ben on the way back. That okay?
If it'll get him to wipe that look off his face, then sure.
She answered. Charlie gave a goofy thumbs up to Ben, who forced himself to smile, and they headed outside to their old truck.
Hey, honey, where is it again?
Charlie asked as he put the car into reverse in the parking lot.
I think it's on Backer Pike,
She said.
Sounds about right.
He returned. He gave a sly look towards Ben.
We may or may not go there more than we should.
He turned on the radio and pulled out of the church's parking lot.
And the hangman plays the mandolin before he goes to sleep. And the last thing on his mind is the wild-eyed boy imprisoned neath the covered wooden shaft.
They went inside the sweet-smelling store about 15 minutes later and waited patiently in line as a green-haired girl took their orders.
So, how's school going?
Helen asked, after they sat down at their table. Ben shrugged his shoulders and mumbled.
Good.
That's not what your mother told us.
Charlie rebutted.
She said your grades aren't doing so hot.
Ben could feel his face turn red, and he stared down at his ice cream. He used to make straight A's.
Ben, honey, it's okay.
Helen soothed.
It's been rough lately, I know.
Helen rested her hand on his, and Ben looked into her eyes to see not disappointment or anger, but sadness.
It's okay, sweetie. We're here for you.
I know.
He murmured, not sure how to respond.
Ben, you're more than a grandson to us. You're more like a son.
Charlie's voice had lost its joviality.
And we want you to be happy. And I know you're in grief. Death is a tricky thing to cope with. And we're not going to tell you to turn to God or anything, but we do ask that you turn to us.
A tear ran down Ben's cheek, but he was too embarrassed to wipe it away and draw attention to it. Helen did it for him anyways.
Ben, it's okay to be sad.
I know.
He said. They both smiled at him.
Is there anything you want to talk about?
She asked. Ben started to shake his head, but thought of the dream he had.
What is it, son?
Charlie asked.
It's just... On my birthday, my parents went out on a date after everyone left, and I had this dream.
He pauses for a moment, trying to think of the right words.
And in it, me and my friends were riding around on our bikes, and I suggested we go on top of the school because I thought it might be fun. But when we got there, my friend Thomas tried to stop us because he was scared of somebody calling the police on us, but we ignored him. And my friend Jay went up first, and then Daniel started to climb up as well. I climbed on top of the dumpster underneath him in case he fell, and then Thomas told us that he saw cops coming, and Daniel fell. That actually happened last summer, except in real life, I caught him. But in a dream, I didn't. And he hit his head on the dumpster and fell to the ground. And there was blood everywhere, and he wasn't moving. But right before I woke up, he looked right at me, and he had a hole in his head, and his eyes were all popped out. And I can't stop thinking about it, because that's how he looked when
Ben shook his head and tried to stop his chin from quaking before they noticed, but Helen came around the table and held him, and he couldn't stop himself, not even when people began to stare.
Shh. It was only a dream, sweetie. It was only a dream.
Hey, Ben, you want to go out to the car? I think we'll have a little bit more privacy.
They went out of the car, where Ben was comforted by his grandparents, but was reluctant to go back home, and saddened that they had to leave. The next 2 weeks saw Ben's humor snapped away, only to be replaced by a total apathy, leaving him almost emotionless. He wasn't depressed, but simply uninterested. Even the new book he'd been so excited about had become dull, being so much a chore to read that he instead put it away, and chose instead to sit by the window in his playroom and pretend to observe his surroundings. It had been raining lately, and he enjoyed watching the fat droplets slide down the glass. Even when it didn't rain, he found he enjoyed the overcast tone the sky had taken up with the onset of autumn. Before, he would have thought it was gloomy, but now he found the cloudy skies to be much like a warm, comforting blanket. Sometimes he would try to think about things, but no thoughts seemed to be worthy of his time. The only thing of any real interest to him was an increasing sense that he was never alone, that something was always glaring at the back of his head. Eventually, he found himself thinking again of that book, but try as he might, he couldn't push it under the bed of his mind. He felt that it was somehow responsible for the restless, invisible eyes that followed him everywhere. He started to become paranoid, frequently throwing his gaze behind him only to find that nothing seemed to be amiss. But he would not read that damn book. Then the nightmares came. At first, he couldn't recall what terrors kept sending him head first and shivering into the night air of his bedroom at odd hours. But as time wore on, he could remember them with increasing clarity. They weren't unlike the nightmare he'd suffer on his birthday, and indeed all crouched under the same dark umbrella. Every night, another positive memory he'd shared with Daniel would be tainted by the events being gruesomely twisted, to encompass him dying or suffering in ways Ben would never have thought possible. And as the days wore on, they began to creep into his daily life by forcing him into an unwilling slumber, never leaving him to rest nor live peacefully. At the same time, though, his thoughts kept being forced towards that wretched book, until eventually he could not stand it any longer. His willpower had been ground away, and in Ben's mind there was no other choice but to sit down and read it, cover to cover, even if it made him sick, especially the last page. But he just couldn't bring himself to tell his parents. even though he knew he desperately needed to. It was several weeks before he finally mustered up the courage.
What in Sam hell have you been watching on TV?
Dave demanded during breakfast one December morning after Ben had described a chapter about a man being drowned in his own blood. After reading it, Ben had felt as though he couldn't contain himself. He simply needed to tell somebody, to get help from someone who could set things right.
Just normal cartoons, Dad.
He replied.
But I'm not talking about the TV. I was talking about the book with the pictures in it.
Davy?
His mother called from the kitchen.
Did Ben steal a copy of Hustler from the school library again?
No, honey, he's not talking about nude magazines. He's talking about...
He stopped and peered at him over an expansive newspaper.
What were you talking about?
Ben stared at him incredulously. He had been talking for at least 10 minutes about something that had really been upsetting him for quite some time at this point. But instead of repeating himself, Ben simply led his parents upstairs to his bedroom, so that he could simply show it to them. The only problem was that it was nowhere to be found. School that day was unusually normal for Ben. Walking home from the bus stop, his mind somewhat eased by the blissfully dull day. He could see that both of his parents' cars were parked in the driveway. However, when he went inside, there was no signs of life whatsoever. His parents were usually busy when he got home from school, but no lights were on anywhere in the house. Confused, he tried calling their cells from the home phone in the kitchen, but was only greeted by their curt and slightly rude voicemails. Unsettled by this point, Ben decided to check upstairs, nervously glancing in each room until he was in front of the playroom. A pit was forming in Ben's stomach. He tried to ignore the creaking of the carpeted floor as he approached the door, which was closed for some reason. The room was empty and dead silent at that. It was eerily darker in there than the rest of the house, too, as the quickly fading winter light struggled to squirm through the closed blinds. A quick glance over gave him nothing, but there was still the cubbyhole and the attic left to check, as he'd made sure to check all the closets, just in case. If they weren't there, then what? He figured he'd figure that out once it got to that point, which he had a sneaking suspicion might happen. Ben slowly eased across the room, apprehensive. In this state, Ben had forgotten to turn the light on, and it was all the way across the room by the door. He was by the half door in the wall that opened into the attic, and he didn't want to backtrack. Oh well, he thought. Then he flung the door open. A great crash erupted from inside the attic, from behind him across the room, and immediately the door to the playroom was slammed shut with terrifying force, causing the walls to quake. It happened so fast that he didn't even notice the near-total darkness that swept across the room. He didn't even realize the door had been closed until he flung himself across the room and frantically tried to twist the locked doorknob. Then the black silence took hold of him. The attic was attached to the left side of the playroom, opposite from the cubbyhole, and was accessed by a half door. Ben never went into the attic, nor had he ever been curious about its contents in the slightest. One of his earliest memories had always been of his father forcing him to watch a horror movie about a monster that lived in the attic, and ever since he'd always been terrified by the thought of entering it, despite spending the majority of his time in close proximity to it. But Ben knew that there was something in the attic now, something real, something he was locked in there with, and despite the silence, his heart boomed and thudded rapidly in his ears like a drum, and his sharp, shallow breath was the whirlwind of sound. His eyes remained locked on that door in front of him that led to the hallway. Even when he heard the door to the attic creaking slowly behind him, groaning like some monstrous demon, He stood there, frozen in place, imagining pale, slimy hands reaching out silently towards him, ready to wrap their skeletal fingers around his throat. Instead, he heard something else. It was the sound of a woman weeping softly, the sound of his mother.
Ben. Ben. I just want my baby. Please. Please give him back, Ben.
Mom?
He whispered, but there was no answer. Ben turned around and could vaguely make out the open doorway to that long, narrow room that was somehow even darker than the rest of the room. He silently tried to flick the lights on, but to no avail.
Mom. Mom.
He whispered again, though to no reply. It sounded as though she was all the way in the back of the attic. Drenched in sweat, he finally mustered up the courage to venture into the black abyss. He forced his feet to move forward and tried to ignore the goosebumps sending icy shivers down his body. He kept forcing his legs to move, until eventually he stood just within the attic.
Mom.
He repeated in a hushed voice.
My baby. That's all I ask. I just want Ben.
Mom.
He hissed.
I'm right here. It's Ben.
Ben?
She croaked.
Ben? Is that really you? Oh, thank God. No. No. No!
He heard a short-lived shriek followed by what sounded like a large sack being slammed against the wall. It crumpled into a pathetic heap on the floor. Ben stifled a sob and clenched his teeth, eyes wide and stinging, trying to penetrate the absolute darkness. From the back of the attic came a scratchy, quiet growl, followed by a faint click behind him from the door being gently closed. A high, raspy voice hissed not a mere 2 feet away from Ben's face. A second voice growled from behind, gravelly and guttural.
We know of the book.
Ben could vaguely sense that they were closing in on him, cornering him.
Worst.
The creature in front spat. No words or thoughts could have become of Ben at that moment. He had lost all reason and was simply in a state of pure terror. The thing behind him roared. Tears escaped Ben's frozen eyes, and his muscles cramped as he crouched in the attic, unmoving. An ear-rupturing shriek exploded within the room, and Ben's torso was seized by powerful arms that whirled him around. He saw a blinding flash of light, and...
Ah! Scared you, didn't we, sport?
His father guffawed idiotically, ruffling Ben's sweat-soaked hair. Ben didn't answer. He didn't even look at his father's face. He simply shoved him away as hard as he could, and stormed out of the attic and through the now unlocked door, slamming his own bedroom door shut and locking it from inside.
Hey, what the hell, Ben? It was a prank. You don't need to act like a little fucking bitch about it.
Dave shouted from the other side of the door. He heard the doorknob rattle momentarily, before his father began to beat on the door again.
How dare you lock the door on me? How fucking dare you? You better open this door right now. You hear me? You open it right fucking now.
Shut the fuck up.
Ben screamed, hurling a baseball at the door.
Excuse me? Fucking excuse me?
I said shut up, Dave.
I'm gonna beat that little ass when I get in there. Now you open this goddamn door right now!
David!
Penny shrieked from the stairs. Ben thrust his fist into the wall, flinching when it actually stung a little bit. He wanted to make a hole, but he didn't put enough power behind his punch.
Ben, open this door, or I'm gonna bust it down and break your fucking jaw, you little shit!
David!
Now shut up!
Step away from the door, David. You're out of control. Dave, I'm serious.
There was a hefty pause outside the room, the air heavy and suffocating.
Fuck it. Fine. Ben, get the fuck to bed. I'll deal with you in the morning.
Nothing more was said as he stormed down the stairs. Ben almost expected his mother to come in to comfort him, but he only heard a quiet sigh before her softer footsteps followed his father's. Later, he could hear arguing and a sharp cry of pain from his mother. Ben would discover a fresh hole in his parents' bedroom door the next morning. Ben didn't sleep that night. If you would like to submit your stories, please check out the Panic Within subreddit. I go over those stories that are submitted, and I go ahead and I narrate them. I say go over, but I narrate all of them. So if you are interested in something like that, go ahead and take a look in the description, and you'll find the link there. We also have a Discord. You can come and hang out and get spooky with me and other narrators. We post new content, up-and-coming videos, promotions, and we also just hang out and chat, and you can come and hang out with us there. If you're interested in that, link is also in the description below. And last but not least, if you are interested in doing a collab with the King of Panic or myself, you can absolutely reach out. If you're another creator, you can do one on our channel, we can do one with you. We are completely open for collab as of right now. Looking for new stuff to do and very excited for anybody who reaches out. The best way to do that is through Twitter or Discord. I do check Instagram and I will get back. It just might take a little longer because I'm super bad at that, but I've been trying to be better. So if you do reach out there, even if it takes a couple days, I'll be there. But like I said, we're excited. So please definitely reach out and we're looking forward to it. And as always, thank you for visiting the Panic Room. You have successfully made it to the next portion of your tour. Please stay tuned for your next prompt. Click the like button and subscribe to receive notifications for when the next portion of your tour is ready to join. Thank you for watching. Don't let the panic drown you.